Okay, so I'm going to be working the fall semester TEKS review for your test tomorrow, which is also going to serve as a mastery test. So it's its own, and it's the mastery. Okay. All right, so it says two conditional statements are given. We're going to write the converse and determine their truth values. So the first says, if two angles have the same measure, then they are congruent. That's true. That's by definition of congruence. Converse means that you flip them. So the converse would say, if two angles are congruent, then they have the same measure. Okay? This is also true. If two angles are congruent, then they have the same measure. So it goes both ways in this case. The next one says, if two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary. This is true. Hold on. Okay. If two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary. So as a reminder of what a linear pair looks like, these are two angles that are adjacent to each other, and they form a line, which means that they'll equal 180 degrees. Converse of that, if two angles are supplementary, then they form a linear pair. Okay, now this is false. And the reason why is because just because two angles are supplementary, like I can have a 120 degree angle, and then I can have another 60 degree angle. These add to 180, they're supplementary. But because they're not adjacent, they're not right next to each other, they're not connected to each other, they don't form a linear pair, and that's why this is false. Okay, write two angle addition statements from the following pictures. All right, so for this one, we look at how this large angle and what it's made of. Okay, so the large angle is made of angles WZX and XZY. The whole angle is WZY. So what we would say is angle WZX plus angle XZY is equal to angle WZY. Okay? Same idea here. So we have EHF is one of the smaller ones. We have angle FHG, okay? And then this one is the whole one, angle EHG. Okay. Use the picture below to answer the following questions. So it says, which pairs of angles are congruent to each other? So in this picture, you have vertical angles, which are across from each other, and you have linear pairs, which are next to each other, and they're supplementary. So some examples of the vertical angles, 4 would be congruent to 2, and 1 would be congruent to 3. Those are our vertical angles. Okay. For the linear pairs, any two that are next to each other, so 4 and 3 are linear. We could say 2 and 3, 1 and 2, and 1 and 4. Okay, those are all linear pairs as you move your way around this picture. Okay, given angle ABC, draw BD so that it bisects that angle. So bisect means to cut in half. So we're going to put D right in the middle. Okay, and then we need to make sure to label our diagram that this angle is congruent to this one. Okay. All right. So ADB would be congruent to DBC, this angle here. ABD plus DBC make up ABC, which is the whole angle. Okay, this is our big angle. Okay. 2. So this little m, okay, this stands for measure. Okay. So whenever you see that, what it's reading is, for example, this one is saying the measure of angle ABC. This one is saying 2 times the measure of angle. So it's asking 2 times what will give you this whole angle. And really, you could use either of these. So we could say ABD, or we could say DBC. Either one works. Okay. This one says the measure of angle ABD is less than the measure of what angle? And so this only has one answer, and that's ABC. This angle right here, okay, is not less than this angle over here, because those two are congruent. So this angle is less than this whole angle, which is ABC. Okay, this one is saying half the measure of ABC is equal to what? So half of this whole angle could be either one of these. So either angle ABD or DBC. Either one works. Okay. So, number 5, next page. We're trying to determine these missing angles and which side of the triangle is the longest. So to start, okay, we've got only 2 angles in this picture, 102 and 38. So 38 is vertical with J, which means that those two will be equal to each other. And then 102 and H are a linear pair. So we can get H by subtracting from 180. Okay, 180 minus 102 gives us that this angle is 78. And then we know that angles in a triangle are supposed to add to 180 degrees. So we'll add 78 plus 38. That gives us 116. 180 minus 116 gives us 64 for G. Sorry, H is 78 and J is 38. Okay, now it says which side is the longest. So what we learned is that the longest side is always across from the largest angle. So our largest angle is 78. That means our longest side is GJ. Okay, how do you know? Because the largest angle is 78. Okay. Last, it wants us to classify the triangle. So if all of the angles are different, that means all of the sides will also be different. So this is scalene. Okay. Then it's either going to be acute, right, or obtuse. So none of these angles are right or obtuse, which means this has got to be acute. They're all acute. Okay, next problem. So we've got the measure of DEX is 37 and FCA is 30. And we want to solve for the missing angles in this picture. Okay? So first, these two are vertical, which means if that's 37, this will also be 37. Based on the markings and the diagram, we're also told that these two angles are congruent. So if that's 37, that's 37. Then we add 37 plus 37 is 74, and subtract that from 180. And that leaves us that this angle is 106. And based on these markings, those should be congruent. So that's also 106. Now, we can get this final angle, okay, right here, by adding 106 plus 30, and then subtracting that from 180, and that gives us that that is 44 degrees. Okay? Okay, so now it wants us to first classify triangle ABE, so that's this triangle here. Okay, so looking at the angles, 2 of these angles are congruent. If 2 angles are congruent, that means 2 sides are congruent, so this is isosceles. Okay. It has 1 obtuse angle, so that makes it obtuse isosceles. Okay, next, AFC. So all 3 angles are different, which means that all 3 sides will be different. So this is scalene. And then it has 1 obtuse angle, so this is obtuse scalene. Okay. All right. So it says write C and D in the picture, given that those are collinear points, but not necessarily in that order. So we're going to write C here and D here. On the test, I don't think there's a question where you have to write in letters. They're already put into the diagram for you. Okay. So then it tells us that AB, this length, is congruent to CD, and AC is congruent to BD. And we're just trying to decide if these are true or false. Okay, now you don't have to do it this way, but a trick that I like to use is I give this picture measurements. And as long as it's following the rules of the diagram, it'll be fine. It doesn't matter what those measurements are. So let's say, for example, maybe this is a length of 7, and this is a length of, I don't know, let's do like 16, okay? So the reason I made these different is because in the diagram, this is not congruent to that, or we don't know if it is, so we can't assume that it is, so we'll assume that they're different. What we do know is that this is congruent to that, so this should also be a length of 7, okay? Now, knowing that, when you add those together, AB should be a length of 23, okay? And CD would be the same. You know what, it's not going to be super easy to see the... No, I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to do it. Okay. All right, so then 7 plus 16 plus 7 gives us that the length of the whole line from A to D would be 30. 7 plus 16 plus 7. Now, the reason that this is helpful is because instead of going through and trying to determine if these statements are true based on the letters, you can just plug in numbers and see if the math makes sense. So the first one, it says AC plus BD equals AD. So we said that AC is 7, BD is 7, and AD is 30. Well, when you add 7 plus 7, that is not 30, which tells you that this is false. Okay. Now visually, if you weren't plugging in fake measurements, you could look and see that AC and BD do not make up the whole line. They're missing this middle piece. So that's another way to figure out this problem. Okay. So then we've got AB and plus BD equals AD. So AB has a length of 23, BD has a length of 7, and AD is 30. So 23 plus 7, that is equal to 30. Okay. So this is a true statement. The math makes sense. Next, 2 times AC, which is 7, is equal to AB, which was 23. When we multiply 2 times 7, that is equal to 14, not 23. So that tells you that this is a false statement. 3 times AC, which is 7, is equal to AD, which we said was 30. Okay. 3 times 7 is equal to 21, not 30. This is false. Okay. Let's see. AD is equal to 3 times BD. So AD was 30. BD was 7. So this is pretty much saying the same thing, okay, which makes sense because those are congruent to each other. So we know this is going to be false. Okay. Next, 1/3 of AD, which is 30, is equal to AC, which we said was 7. So 1/3 times 30 does not equal 7. That tells you that this is false. Okay. 1/2 AB, which is 23, okay, is equal to AC, which we said was 7. Okay. So 1/2 times 23, not 7. This is false. Okay. Last one. 1/2 of CD, which we said was 23, equals AC, which is 7. Again, it's the same problem. So we know that this is going to be false. Okay. Only one true statement in all of this. Okay, moving on to the next problem. So number 8, Vanessa drew 2 collinear segments, DE and EF, with the following measurements. So let's place these, D, E, and F. DE has a length of 2, EF has a length of 8, and we know that DF would be 10, since 8 plus 2 equals 10. So let's determine if these are true or false. And again, this time we have some measurements to work with, so it makes it even easier because we can just plug in the numbers. Okay, so DE is 2, and it's saying 2 is equal to 1/5 of DF, which is 10. So if we multiply 1/5 times 10, that is equal to 2. So this is a true statement. Okay. Next, DE, which we said was 2, plus EF, which is 8, is equal to DF, which is 10. 2 plus 8 is 10. That's true. E is between D and F. Yeah. 5 times DE, which is 2, is equal to DF, which is 10. 5 times 2 is 10. That's true. Okay. 1/4 of DE is equal to EF. So 1/4 times 2 does not equal 8. That's false. Okay. All right. To kind of make it easier to upload these videos, I'm going to upload the next page on a separate video, and I'm going to create a playlist. So if you're in YouTube, just let it go to the next video so that you can see the next page.